This is a video about ear training. I usually make video for jazz guitarists, but if you play another instrument, you can probably find some of this information useful as well. I'm a guitar teacher and I also teach ear training. I've never been able to find a good ear training book, at least not for jazz. If you are aware of a good book that you have used, please let me know in the comments below. So in this video we're going to use an app or some apps, different apps. I'll show you how to use them, how I use them, and some websites. I'm going to try not to rant too much. I'm already kind of ranting, but let's just get started, shall we? The first app I want to talk about is an app called Perfect Ear. And it's a free app, but you have to pay to get the most out of it. But it's very inexpensive. This is great for practicing intervals. We're going to start with intervals. Also triads, chords, and scales. So let's start with interval identification. And I'm going to guess here. This might show how well I know my audience. But if I pick all intervals up to an octave ascending, you can all do this. So chromatic, all intervals within an octave. So let's start with that. So there's always a little bit of a lag with the Wi-Fi or with the Bluetooth, but you just click again. So that's an octave, right? Let's do another one. That's a minor seventh. So here I think there are three reactions from you watching now. Either you, like me, know kind of for sure that what the answer is. Then if that's you, that's cool. Then you probably don't have to do this too much. Move on and do something else. Transcribe something, tunes, or even solos without your instrument. Try to hear 4-part chords and with extensions. We're gonna get to that later on in the video. Then there are some of you who are probably, yeah, I think that was the flat seventh, but you're not quite sure. Then, you need to work on this some more. Then some of you don't know the answer, and like I have no idea what that was. What you need to do then is you start with just a few intervals. So don't try to hear all the intervals at once, right? That's trying to swallow too much at the same time. So take your time. You have to be patient with this stuff. And do it with your instrument. And this app gives you kind of a fretboard. I think you set it up when you start using it, what instrument you are. And if you set it up as a guitar, you get a fretboard. And you can actually click on the screen, on the notes, which is really cool. Then you get descending, which I find just as easy because all you have to do is kind of pick the second note and then reverse it, and then you get the same. But harmonic is a little bit more difficult. Now they're going to be played simultaneously. So still all the 12 intervals. So that's a fourth. Perfect fourth. And then I can click on it as many times as I want. And here I can because the thing here is you need to be able to extract the both pitches. You need to hear it as a sound, or you need to be able to hear it as a sound in and of itself, but also to kind of draw out each pitch. Most people hear the top note. It's the lower note that is hard to hear, but you need to be able to do that. Bass players usually have a tendency to do that. So this was, let's see, G sharp and C sharp. Can you hear the bottom notes? Bo. And the top note, da. So try to focus on the bottom notes, la. Only the bottom. Try to ignore the top note. And then focus on the top note. I suggest doing this by the piano. The piano is even better than if you have a piano, but I mean like a real piano. preferably. It's something about that instrument that is really good for ear training, because you can kind of almost feel the vibrations. Let's move on to chord identification. Triads. So you have a whole list of, a whole menu here, minor and major. So that should be pretty easy. Augmented and diminished. It's almost easier to hear because they stand out. Triads, ascending, same thing here, right? Ascending, descending, and harmonic. Let's do triads, ascending. So the option here is major triad, minor triad, diminished, augmented, sus2 and sus4. So that's an augmented. Again, I get like an image of the fretboard, which is really good. So if this is new to you, maybe do it with your instrument first for a month, and then try to do it without your instrument. Let's do one more. So that's minor, right? Okay, that's a little bit too easy. But again, if this is difficult for you, start with just major, minor, then just the next. Don't try to do everything at once, and don't frustrate yourself and think that, oh my God, I have to do everything at once. No, it's better to spend time with each sound until you get used to it. But here's where it gets a little bit more difficult. You can choose chord inversions. Here is where I find students start to struggle. So let's just do major and minor triads inversion. Major and minor triads inversions. So that's the first inversion of a major triad, right? Again, I can click on the notes and I can find and play them on the guitar if I find this kind of difficult. So how did I know that? Well, here you need to know a little bit of theory, right? You need to know that an inversion is a major triad in first inversion is a minor third and a perfect fourth. And the second inversion is a perfect fourth and a major third. You can think of melodies too, right? Like that's a Arvo Pärt melody. And the minor second inversion is the so you should be able to sing them too. You should practice singing like a roots position, major, do do do, minor do da da, and major first inversion, do da da, and so on and so forth. And you do descending. Now let's do harmonic. Major and minor triads, inversions, harmonic. Here is when it gets a little bit more difficult. I actually recommend doing this with headphones. Boo, ba, bum, boo, bum, bum. That's a major triad in second inversion, right? Then here is really good that I can boo, ba, ba. I can click on the notes to make sure that I'm singing the lowest note. Can you focus on the lowest note? The middle note, which is hardest, maybe not in this case because it's the actual root. Let's do a few more. I think that's a major triad in first version. Correct. That's a minor in second inversion, right? Yeah. So that's that Godfather theme song. But again, I need to be able to pull out those notes one by one, and as well as hearing it as sound. But if you can do that, if you can hear each pitch by itself, then the sound, hearing it as one sound, is gonna happen automatically. So far we're doing intervals and the triads and inversions. But again, if you are struggling with this, don't try to do the inversions yet. Stay with the root position triads until you really master that. And stay with it only a few intervals, maybe the diatonic and then the chromatic, or only like a handful. So here's another site for working on this stuff called TonedEar. You can do the same kind of thing. It's set up a little bit differently, so you can choose intervals, and then you can choose, if you're a beginner, just the major third, perfect fifth, and octave. Or you choose diatonic, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, which is all the intervals, right, of a major scale. Or all intervals, meaning all chromatic intervals. Alright, so let's say you're a beginner. Let's start with just only these three. So that's a third. That's a fifth. Notice there that you can get confused because you're kind of hearing the interval in relation to the interval you heard before. So that's why you don't want to do it too fast. Also, you want to listen with interest. Pay close attention to what it sounds like. Listen almost like you're meditating. And don't do too much of this, only maybe 5 minutes a day. But it's more important to do it, I say this to my students all the time. If you can do 5 minutes a day, that's quite a lot actually. It's not like practicing, your instrument. You can't cram this stuff. If you work for this for an hour, it's just useless. You really need to kind of do this over a long period of time in small kind of increments. You have the option of doing ascending, descending, and harmonic here as well. And there's this bar up here. When you answer correct enough times, this bar is going to get filled. It's going to add more intervals from this menu over here. But you can also click on, if you want to work on another interval, you click on it. Or if you want to just work on 2 different intervals. So this is perfect for a beginner. And if you find that even that hard, which is fine, you can choose this fixed root option, meaning you always get the interval from the same note, so you're not changing around keys. So this site is really good for that. Let's do chords. Starts with triads. Here you can choose which inversion you want to work on, which is really good. And you can do 7th chords and this stuff. So let's actually move on to that. Let's do 7th chords, but inversions would be really difficult. Alright, so we have the option of dominant, major 7, and minor 7. Actually, let's do all 7 chords. In here you see a menu of what the blue ones are the ones we're working on. So here, I think that's half diminished, augmented 7th, right? You see how the bar gets. Let's do another one. Why do I get the difficult ones? Is that augmented major 7? Yeah. And I can do this, I can click on individual notes. So that I make sure that I'm answering with the correct answer. You can always click on here again. So this is pretty good for that. This website also, I think this comes as, you can get this as an app as well. I use just the website. Has this thing called, let's see here, intervals in context, which is really important. Here you get 3 different intervals, and this is what's going to happen. You get a cadence, and Dum 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 dim dum dum dim. That's the first note is the third, and the second note is the fifth. Right? So I didn't hear the interval from the root. I heard a third from a chord, from a key. Let's say you're in C major. I don't think that was C major, but let's say we are. The E and the G, that's a minor third, but it's not from the root of that key, it's from the third of that key, which gives it a kind of a major sound, even because it's part of the major chord. So sometimes you'll hear people say like this kind of ear training is worthless when you're practicing just intervals like that. It's really the traditional way of teaching ear training is you start with intervals. And you hear like sometimes I get ads on YouTube like, this is a waste of time, blah, 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 or like, don't do this. I think what they're saying is that when you hear melodies, it's not always like the tonic and then another note, right? Intervals happen within the key, so you need to be able to recognize that as well. That's where this exercise comes in handy. It's really good that they do that, because a minor third sounds different where in the key you find that minor third. So anytime you see somebody saying don't practice ear training, it's a waste of time, don't listen to that. Have them call me, I'll tell them they're wrong. I find that people who say that, it's usually clickbait, or they have some kind of other way of teaching ear training that they're kind of trying to sell. It's kind of like when people say if you want to get really fit, don't go to the gym. They're trying to sell you some new kind of method of how to get fit. Clearly, if you go to the gym every day, you're going to get fit. The same thing here. If you do this every day, your ear's going to improve. There's no way that's not going to happen. And also I find that the people who say that, like, yeah, I never worked on that stuff. I just kind of learned how to play and I learned to transcribe solos. Yeah, that's kind of ear training too. And you probably have good ears to begin with, so you don't have to worry about this stuff, right? So definitely this stuff is very important. Just imagine that I play something here. I'm going to hide my guitar. I play something. Again, some of you know for sure what I'm playing. And I'm not talking about perfect pitch, you just know what this is. Some of you are kind of, I think I know what that is. And some of you have no idea what I'm playing. I'm playing this. It's C major 7 in first inversion. Drop 2. Who would you rather be? The person who knows what that is, or the person who doesn't? You know, that's a kind of a dumb question, but you get my point. If you're gonna be a jazz musician and play with other musicians, and they throw stuff at you, not just a jazz musician, a musician in general, you don't always know exactly what's going on, right? But you should be able to understand what's happening with your ears. That's just like, you know, imagine you're a painter. You should be able to know what colors you're using. Let's put it this way, it's a handicap if you don't know, if you're not able to do that. I'm not saying you need to be able to know exactly. That's a pretty advanced thing to be able to kind of pick up, but this basic stuff that I'm showing you, you should be able to do that. I'm not saying that you suck if you can't do that. I'm saying it, if you can't do the stuff that I'm showing you here in this video, you maybe take some time, maybe 5 months. Don't practice all the technical stuff, but rather practice this every day. I guarantee you your playing is going to improve. That might actually be what's stopping you if you feel that you're not improving. It's the ears you need to work on. I find that the case with a lot of students. There's a fun exercise here called perfect pitch, where you start with 3 notes. So that's an E, and that's a D, obviously. Again, E, C, C, D, right? So again, when I fill up the bar, it's going to add more notes, and to hopefully eventually you will hear all 12 notes. But you are saying that, well, you're not using perfect pitch, you're using relative pitch. But that's the point, or that's actually how you do it. You use your relative pitch, but after a while you're starting to like recognize, so that's that note again. It sounds like that. The D sounds like a D, and you start to listen in a different way. There's this guy, David Lucas Burge, I think his name was, or his name is. He was selling perfect pitch courses back in the day. I don't think you can do that anymore because of internet. But he talks about that when you try to develop perfect pitch, you actually use your relative pitch. But gradually, your other way of hearing, where you hear the notes more as colors rather than a pitch, you start recognizing the D for what a D sounds like. So it's kind of fun to do that. I don't worry about having perfect pitch or not too much, but it's interesting. It makes you listen in a different way. These apps are good for chords and scales and intervals. I don't find the melodic dictations doesn't work really, and the chord progression doesn't work either. It's better to use, when I teach, I use actual songs for chord progressions, and melodic dictations I play something or we listen to something. I don't think these apps work, but there's another app I want to show you. It's called Teoria or Teoria, I don't know how you pronounce that. Here you can sign in and track your progress. Here I want to do something a little bit more difficult for those of you who are more advanced. Let's do extended chords. So this is going to play me a 4-part chord and then an extension after that. So I have to recognize the chord, we have some adds here, and then here I can choose how. So again, don't start with everything. Let's downsize this a little bit. So a dominant 7th with maybe a 9th. I'll actually do the dominant 7th. Why not? But maybe not do this. Well, let's do minor major 7. Let's not do that one. The dominant 7 sharp 5 and flat 5, they're pretty tricky to hear, so maybe not start with that. But let's go. And here it's really good. I can set how long I want to practice this, so 5 minutes, that's actually plenty. I would not use this answer in 10 seconds because, again, it's not a speed thing. You do it with patience. So that's a dominant chord. Correct. What is the extension? So I click on this to hear it again. That's a 13. Correct. Here's what's really good. I can click on this thing and hear it broken, and it slows down the more I click on it. Okay, let's do that one. That's so again, I need to find the root, right? That's a minor 7, and so that's a 13. So you see what a big leap that is. So you can use your theory thinking that, well, if it's a big leap, well, it's probably this can only be a 9 or an 11th or 13th. Or I can hear that it's actually a major 7 between those two last notes. So here's what I recommend doing. Do this exercise if you're ready for it, but every other day do it with your guitar and try to play these chords. Some of them you won't be able to play because you can't play these closed voicings, but right? Can I play that? No, not really. That would be incredibly difficult voicing to grab. But that's a major 7 on top, right? Let's do another one. That sounds like a minor major 7. That's a tritone. So that's an 11th then. Alright. So again, I can click on this. Or slower. Let's see if I can play this chord. No. Maybe an octave higher? Yeah. It's so this is really fun. You can actually do with 2 extensions then as well, which gets even more tricky. And if you add all those chords options at the beginning there, it's quite advanced. Now here's a question a lot of students ask here. Well, let's say I can hear this. The problem is you don't always play, or not at all, you don't play an A minor major 11 like that. You know, you find other voicings. Piano players have their way of playing voicings. Guitar players, I would never play that exact voicing, so you need to be able to hear how, like, all the kind of drop 2 and all those things. But the thing is, if you can hear this, that's a good start. That means you were able to recognize that sound. So that means you're going to be able to recognize it even if there's a different way of playing that chord, right? But this is another thing I want you to do. This is the last exercise I'll show you. A couple of things. We didn't talk about scales, and we didn't talk about chord progressions, but the scales also are good in these apps. You can work on scales, but chord progressions doesn't really work, I don't think. And dictation, it's better if you can find a partner to work on dictation. Or try to transcribe songs without your instrument, but don't pick like Frank Zappa or something, pick like easier stuff. But you can actually use your loop pedal. So what I would do, sometimes I'll do this exercise and I'll write down the chords. So let's say A minor major 11. And then I'll write down, like, so I have a list of 30 chords. Then I will play them with the loop pedal, but really slowly. So let's say I have like A minor major 11. I would play that chord like this. I'm actually going to play it up here, because I'm going to put the root on the A string, and then I'm going to play the chord like I would play it. So let's say slowly. Bass note, then the chord. And then break it up so I can hear the answer. But you have to wait a while, right? Then whatever next chord comes, whatever chords come next, maybe E, 7 flat 5, bass note, chord. And then break it up. Let's do maybe C major 9. You would probably wait longer. And if you have a loop pedal, then I play whatever I hear, and you're thinking, well, you're gonna remember. I don't think so. if you play 20 chords, you're not gonna remember them. But you want to keep the bass notes on the same string so you don't get confused. If you have a loop pedal, a decent loop pedal, I think my records for like 20 minutes. That's quite a lot. You can do this for a long time. Even if I do remember for whatever reason, let's say I do remember the next chord was an E7 flat 5, like this. Okay, moving on next. If I do remember that, that's actually a good thing, because what did I just do there? I kind of conjured up that sound in my head before I played, because I remember. So if you can hear that sound, imagine that sound before you play it. That's actually a really good thing. Necessary. You need to be able to hear what you're going to play before you play it. That's how you become a strong musician. Alright, so that was some advice on how to practice ear training and why I think that's important. And let me know in the comments if you have any specific techniques that you use for practicing ear training. And yeah, thanks for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.